self-fulfilling prophecies that children carry with them into adulthood.
What is the matter with you? Why are you crying?
Always getting
Why don't you be more like your sister?
It's all your fault.
Leave me alone. I'm sick
He
of
had a
you.
way of laughing at me that was very humiliating, especially in front of people.
Don't be such a baby.
It was dangerous to try and be open at home because that would give Dad an opening to say something nasty or put me down.
I was told that I was ugly and stupid and incompetent and irresponsible and lazy, and that I would never amount to anything.
I think emotional abuse is even more frightening because you don't have anything to pin it on, nothing to go, this is the abuse.
Can't you do anything right?
Wish you were never born.
Certainly children know when they're experiencing it. Being put down, being humiliated, being constantly criticized. And I don't mean a routine parental criticism, but I mean the type of criticism that never lets up, the type of criticism that never has anything positive to say.
Without exception, every one of the perpetrators on this program was also psychologically abused as a child.
There's no measurement of emotional abuse. Very, very seldom can you call and have an agency whose job it is to prevent the abuse of children respond to a report of emotional abuse. From the time a child is born, they're looking up to significant adults in their lives and they're saying, "Who am I? Who am I?" And with every interaction, with every word, we're telling them who they are.
George is a lecturer and consultant who travels the country teaching parents and professionals how they can help stop child abuse. And George speaks from experience. Years ago, he physically and verbally abused his 2 former wives and 5 children.
It hurts to think about what I did to my children. I called them all stupid. You know, I told them they were backwards. I've told them they were lazy. I've had occasions where I've told my children that they never were going to amount to much. And I know that has a major effect on who they are now. And I feel sad because they are having to go through some of the same struggles I went through, like difficulty in marriage, difficulty in employment, settling, achieving. And that could have been different.
To understand how he became an abusive parent, George had to look to his past and trace the cycle of abuse in his own family.
I can remember when I was like 11, 12 years old, and my mother was still being beat by her mother. You know, I can remember her hitting her and threatening her and throwing things at her. And as I think about abuse in my life, the physical and emotional abuse, it was something that was always there, not only in the home, but in the community.
Recently, George returned to the housing projects where he grew up to confront some painful memories.
So much feeling, so much feeling. Happy times and sad times. Sad times. I could hear my mother telling me that I wasn't any better than anybody else and don't think I'm so special. The negative messages about who you are and what you're going to do were pretty constant up until I left home. And regardless of what I do, I'll still have that pain. It'll always be there. It'll always be. It'll never go away. You know, I'll struggle with that for as long as I live. What I want to do is to go back to my mom in a loving way and say, this is what I experienced, and to have her understand where I'm coming from and have her to really see how the experiences of my childhood might have affected me.
We didn't consider it abuse at that time. Yeah. We were just doing what we thought was the right thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the right thing to us was smack you upside the head and tell you shut up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Realizing now that that wasn't the right thing. Mm-hmm.
When I work with parents, most of them who come in say, I made the decision not to do to my children what was done to me. And then I ask them, I say, that's wonderful. What will you do instead? There's never an answer. They don't know.
Randy knows what to
do. We're not very aware of the power we have to influence children in positive ways. by knowing them and talking with them, talking to children as though they're people, not as though they're things. Good job, okay. So I'm willing to go anywhere and talk to anyone at any time about eliminating child abuse, about how to say good things to your children, how to be nurturing. I don't believe that there are bad parents. I don't believe there are bad people. I believe there are people who don't have the knowledge they need to do what they need to do. You know, the most important job that we do in our lives is to raise children, to be parents, and yet no one ever teaches us how to do that.
For information about improving your parenting skills, please call the toll-free number at the end of our program. It's not easy to forgive any adult, especially a parent who violates a child. But even in the most severe cases of abuse, some shattered families can turn tragedy into healing.
My wife and I used to watch programs on child abuse, you know, the movies, and I was always, oh, they ought to do something to this son of a bitch, you know. He's a worthless scum of the earth. And here I was, molesting my own daughter. I sexually molested my daughter, Wendy, from the time she was 8 years old until the time she was about 10 years old. I would make her masturbate me to ejaculation. I would also belittle her, put her down, beat her, hit her, make physical demands on her, tell her she was a whore, a slut. I was in total control.
He told me, never tell anybody, it's a secret, nobody can know. And if I told anybody, he was gonna kill me.
Brian is a 38-year-old factory worker who sexually molested his daughter, Wendy, for 2 years. The abuse came to an end the day his wife, Roseanne, walked in on it.
He had his hands in her underwear, and he was holding her hand in his.
And there was denial instantly, you know. Oh, it only happened once. Hey, I didn't do it that often, you know, like, does that make any difference? No.
Brian served a short jail term and remained separated from his family after release, but they still faced difficult decisions. After such a betrayal, could they ever be a family again?
I was worried because I felt that I wasn't ever going to see my dad again, because my dad said I would never see him again if I told.
Children will tolerate just about anything to keep their families. That is, to me, what I see in the children's eyes is, please, if I'm going to tell, don't let my family fall apart. Of course, that's not always possible, but with treatment, I think it's possible for a family to choose to stay together if they wish to.
Though Roseanne doubted they could ever reunite, they began a 6-day-a-week process of individualized and group therapy, specifically for families torn apart by incest. In therapy, both parents came to grips with the lasting effects of the sexual abuse in their own childhoods.
I never thought that I would marry somebody that could molest children. And I never thought, during the first few years of our marriage, I never thought that Brian was even capable of it. But I didn't know his background either.
As a 5-year-old boy, Brian was raped by an older relative and then forced to participate in child pornography for 3 years. During 2.5 years of counseling, Brian learned not only why he abused his daughter, but also how to prevent it from happening again.
I have a pattern that led up to my abuse, and these are my warning signals.
Knowing that pattern is crucial. It can tell you if the molest will repeat again. For instance, an abundance of pornography, substance abuse, the evidence of a need to control, to judge, poor self-esteem. We call them red flags. The man who starts working in treatment begins to lose these traits. It takes a deep commitment to change and a deep commitment to grow for these men to have treatment be effective. This family has been very committed to treatment from the very beginning.
I had planned on getting a divorce. I had seen a lawyer. I had done everything. And after a year, I started seeing a lot of major changes in him.
A year and a half ago, the family reunited, but all of them remain in therapy and under close professional observation.
I wouldn't have stopped on my own. At one point, I can remember after I had abused my daughter that I said to myself, that poor kid, I really need to stop this. Why can't I?
I'd like to say to my dad that he shouldn't have done it to me. He shouldn't have done it at all.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was all my fault, and it never, ever should have happened to you. Never.
Most parents don't intend to hurt their children, but they may lack the maturity or the parenting skills to raise kids without abuse. But now there are effective new ways to intervene and save these families before it's too late.
It's a scary feeling because you don't know what you're gonna do or what you're capable of doing when you lose control, and that's what really scares you.
2 years ago, Beatriz, a 22-year-old mother of 3, rushed to a hospital emergency room after lashing out in anger at her 2-year-old daughter, Roxanne.
I was so mad and angry, full of hate. I got Roxanne, and I ended up breaking her leg. I was so afraid of them taking her away. I lied. I told them that she fell because I didn't want them to take her away, but they still did.
Child Protective Services immediately placed Roxanne in foster care.
It's hard. It's hard when your babies are being taken away.
The court ruled that Beatriz must seek rehabilitation if she hoped to regain custody of her daughter. She was enrolled in Avance, a multi-service support program that works to strengthen families through education.
Every time I don't get what I want, then I hit the child. And when he doesn't get what he wants to hit me. But soon enough, he learns that I hit harder than he hits. So he hits others. And then I hit him because he hit somebody else. And so it's a pattern that repeats itself over and over.
And you don't even realize it.
Y no te das cuenta, we don't realize it.
Her case was referred to psychotherapist Maricela Grun.
We found that she had a lot of risk factors for more abuse with her children, that she was very young, very immature. She was very isolated. She didn't have any kind of support.
Since Beatriz came from an abusive background, she never had a chance to see healthy parenting behaviors in action. Using Avance's highly effective program of home visitation, Maricela set out to show Beatriz there were better ways to raise children.
And every time he does that, you need to tell him, you don't hit. You don't get mad at him, don't hit him back, but don't say, oh.
They were too little to understand, and they didn't even know why they were getting hit, and I hit them.
She needed to be taught ways of discipline instead of hitting the children or screaming at them or yelling when they did something that she didn't like.
You having fun? Your mommy play with you? Well, they taught me how instead of spanking them, just to sit down and talk to them and let them know what it is that they're doing wrong instead of having to hit them all the time. Hold on, okay? Mommy's gonna cook Papa. And it took me a long time to become nice and have patience because I was real bad. I had a bad attitude when I first came here.
It was a long process. It was through the visits that we had. It was through the classes with the information that was provided in the classes and through group therapy and individual therapy with her. We had to show her that we believed that she could do it. We had to show her that she was somebody and that she was important.
I really made a change when I opened up and let everybody know what really happened. After that, I started trying harder to get her back, and I succeeded. It was like a dream. I said to myself, now I have everything there is in this world. I don't want anything else.
Beatriz is so much better now. She has a loving husband. I know now that she's still in the process of healing. And I know that if she ever comes to a crisis, she knows where to find help.
Ryson was old enough to remember what happened, and she's always going to remember what happened to her. And I feel bad because sometimes she gets scared, but I let her know it's not the same anymore. Everything's going to be different. You got to sit down and really say to yourself, well, I'm going to do this the right way, and I'm not going to hit my kids. I'm not going to hurt them. I'm going to try to get them to understand what's right and what's wrong. That's the difference.
Child abuse affects all of us, and it's going to take all of us to stop it. The people we profiled on this program paid a tragic price for what they know about child abuse. Each of them has a final thought to share.
I think people out there really should take a good hard look at themselves and their own family. I'm not going to say you're going to find something in your family that's inappropriate. I hope you don't. But if you do, I hope you find somebody that can help you.
I would tell other men that you need to learn to communicate with everyone in your family without secrets. Secrets build upon secrets, and you are as bad as your secrets.
I wish that there were people in my life who were informed on this stuff and who really knew the questions to ask. Like, point blank, look me straight in the eyes and ask me if I'm being molested or touched in any way that I feel uncomfortable with.
If you're offending right now, I suggest, if anything, you go get help, because you can mess up somebody's life just as maybe somebody done mess up yours.
I wish I had known the reason that I lost my temper with my children was that my expectations were unrealistic, not that their behavior was unacceptable.
Once you open up and you let somebody know, it's gonna make you feel better, and you're gonna get help, and you're gonna feel a lot more at ease with yourself and love yourself more and love your kids.
Tell anybody who will listen. Tell your parent, tell your neighbors, your friends, tell your guidance counselor at school, tell your teachers, until somebody listens to you.
Kids are afraid to tell, so they keep it silent. I wish there was a magic word or something that I could say to get kids to tell, to get parents to listen. Every adult in this country needs to listen.
If you are a victim, an abuser, an adult survivor of abuse, or if you want help with parenting, consult your local phone book or please call our toll-free hotline number, 1-800-4-A-CHILD. To receive a free pamphlet on how to prevent and stop child abuse, call the same number, 1-800-4-A-CHILD. We can no longer afford to be scared silent. To order a videotape of this program, please send a check or money order for $8.50 to Scared Silent, Box 933-022, Los Angeles, California, 90093.